This is going to be an extremely direct video about manifestation and how it works. And I'm going to be teaching you just a little bit of human psychology as well, just so that you can understand this topic a little bit deeper. So let's just get right into this. Your life revolves around patterns. This is your conditioning. This is actually your sense of identity. Your identity is not this fixed thing that just exists and that's it. It is very fluid. It has actually been constructed over time and it actually develops. And you can change this, especially when you begin to understand what the identity really is. So patterns create your identity. Beliefs, thoughts, emotional patterns, sensations, impulses, your external, more behavioral-oriented patterns. And once you begin to look into all this stuff with awareness, you can begin to break out of the self that you believe you are, of the conditioned habits that make up your identity, which makes up your life and your sense of self. So shifting patterns essentially shifts identities and the sense and feeling of who you actually are. I want to give you some examples of this so that it's just extremely clear. Someone who doesn't meditate doesn't have the identity of someone who meditates. But when they start meditating, then they start to have the identity of someone who meditates. Someone who doesn't weightlift and then starts weightlifting will begin to build the identity of someone who weightlifts. It's the same thing with scientists. It's the same thing with a Christian. For example, the Christian identity is, someone who goes to church and they pray and they say grace before meals and they follow the 10 Commandments, all that classic stuff. Right? A very typical Christian. Right? Essentially, what's going on? What actually creates the sense of identity? It's a certain structure. It's a certain order of things. It's a certain form of things, basically a set of conditioning that begins to play itself out. It starts to repeat itself. It becomes a subconscious programming that begins to repeat itself automatically, because this is what the subconscious mind does. It gets instilled with a certain structure, a certain form, a certain pattern, and it just starts to play itself out. And by actually bringing awareness to the patterns that make up your sense of who you are, you can actually begin to shift who you are more easily. And basically your entire identity is just a combination of various forms of conditioning that then repeat themselves. And it's this sort of illusion that we have this cohesive sense of self. Because in actuality, there is no cohesive, just like you, this fixed, rigid you that actually exists. In actual direct experience, everything is changing every single second. There's nothing that stays the same even for 1 second. No thought, no feeling, every sensation arises and passes. Everything is fluctuating. Everything in existence is constantly in this state of flux. Things are always vibrating. The external world, everything's vibrating and shifting. So your life organizes itself around your identity. Your identity is a bunch of patterns, right? So your life essentially organizes itself around the patterns that make up who you are. Your level of consciousness, essentially. So by being able to dig in to these patterns, to your basically psychological emotional system, your external life begins to organize itself around that. And just look at your life right now. You have your job, and you're probably identified with your job. I am a teacher. I am a construction worker. So, of course, you just have that life, because that's your mind. That's your psychological emotional system, and it begins to repeat itself. It goes to work almost every day and it builds the roads, or it teaches the kids, or it looks through the microscope as a scientist, right? So you have this identity that begins to just repeat itself over and over and over and over again. Same thing with your diet. I'm, let's say, a vegan, right? A vegan, what is that? It's a particular identity. It's a set of structures. It's a particular order of things. Right? And then we act in alignment with that particular structure. I don't eat meat or honey or dairy, animal products of any kind. Right? That's what a vegan is. Right? It's a certain way of being in the world. It's a certain identity that then controls patterns, right? The patterns make up that identity, I mean. So basically, what are you? And then notice the patterns that exist in relation to that identity. And if you're trying to manifest something, you're trying to create a new result in your life, you have to change up the patterns in your life. A YouTuber, for example, makes videos. Right? If someone doesn't make videos and upload them to YouTube, they're not a YouTuber. They don't have that pattern installed in their life. So of course, that's not who they are. Instead, they're a construction worker, or they're a priest, or whatever. Same thing with if you're a husband or a wife. Right? What's going on here? There's a set of patterns, once again, that's making up that identity. You got married, and you're interacting with your beloved over and over and over again, probably living together, you probably have a family, and there's a certain order of things, a certain structure that occurs, a certain set of patterns that occur to make up that identity, once again. So when it comes to manifestation, this is a really important point. A lot of the things that we believe that we want to manifest aren't even things that we actually want. So I want to urge you to actually get clear about what you really want. A lot of us want that specific person because we want to just prove to ourselves that we're worthy and valuable. We'll want that money because we're just kind of insecure. Right? And there's nothing wrong with any of that stuff. It's just really look at the motivation that is controlling you, because this is going to be another pattern. And if the motivation that is controlling you isn't something that truly aligns with you, you're going to be aligning to a version of you that lives out of alignment with you. You're going to be shifting to someone who doesn't really live in alignment with themselves. No matter what, you are constantly doing this technique because you're always playing out some sort of pattern. Your subconscious mind's always at work. So whether you're aware of it or not, you're going to be doing what I'm saying in one particular way or another. So ideally, you want to align to the version of you that acts out of intrinsic motivation. It acts out of the natural things that bring it a sense of passion, excitement, fun, creativity, curiosity, kind of like a kid. When a kid gets excited by what's going on by the playground over there, and then they go and check it out. That just organic sense of motivation that truly resonates with a very deep part of you. You want to align with the version of you that does the things that makes it feel healthy, peaceful, vital, alive. Rather than the version of you that does things just for money or for status or for fame or for validation. Because a lot of that stuff isn't actually in alignment with who you actually are. There's nothing wrong with that stuff. I'm not saying you can't ever make money. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that the way that you are behaving in your life can very fundamentally be out of alignment. And you can try to manifest things that keep pushing you out of alignment with yourself. And you can live in alignment with yourself and still get a relationship and money and validation and approval. But the core point here is that you have to actually get clear about what really aligns with you so that you're not mistaken in what you are trying to shift towards. Because a lot of our conditioning is stuff that we have picked up from the environment around us, the culture that we live in, the subcultures that we expose ourselves to, like weightlifting culture or hippie culture or punk rock culture. And this kind of stuff like infects our minds in a certain way, in the sense that we begin to have desires and wants that aren't actually organic to us. We just pick them up from people around us and the systems around us and the environment around us, the energy around us. And you actually need to spend time getting clear about, what do you really want? What really aligns with you? What are your values? What are you intrinsically motivated towards? What makes you feel peaceful? What makes you feel happy? What makes you feel excited? What makes you feel vital and full of energy? So I gotta really nail this final point, and that without meditation, essentially what's going to happen is that you're going to be conditioned and you're just going to be acting out that certain set of patterns unconsciously, basically for the rest of your life. And this is how most people operate. They're born, they're conditioned by, the first 20 years of their life, and then that conditioning basically just plays itself out. And there's not much growth that actually really occurs. And you don't really want to fall into that trap. You want to actually learn to become aware of your own conditioning so you can begin to break the identity with it, because just watching it, just observing it, sensing into it, feeling into it, this begins to make your mind more capable of change. This allows the identity to become more fluid, the ego to become less rigid, the mind to open. This allows you to just reconnect to yourself and slowly begin to uncover the things that actually really matter to you and feel very aligned with you. So there's this just core practice of sitting in silence with yourself and really reconnecting with yourself through meditation, that without this, you're essentially going to just be repeating some kind of conditioning and not actually be aware of it. That's the scary part about this, is that it's like it's hijacking you. It becomes mechanical, it becomes robotic, it becomes unconscious. And the more that you make your unconscious conscious, the more say that you have over your life, the more you can actually live in alignment with your true self. There's that classic Carl Jung quote, "Until we make the unconscious conscious, it will rule our life and we will call it fate." I believe that's the quote. So without making the unconscious conscious, we're basically just ignorant and acting repeatedly out of ignorance, essentially. Just what we've been conditioned with. This becomes our sense of self, this becomes our sense of reality, this becomes our entire life, and then we pass away. And you don't want to fall into that trap of just remaining stuck in some garbage that you've picked up from the environment around you. You want to actually learn how to regulate yourself, how to come into deep contact with yourself, how to not avoid yourself, how to actually embrace every single facet of your being so fully that you just would not trade it for the world. You wouldn't trade that sense of acceptance and self-awareness for the world. It's so fucking valuable. That's it for this video. If you're interested in working with me, you can apply to do so one-to-one. I hope you enjoyed this video. I tried to leave it just as direct and clear as possible, just kind of cutting through any potential nonsense, just making it point after point after point. If you have any questions, let me know. Take it easy.